fighter, no clerics or wizards. There was one or two monsters and one or two weapons and one or two armor pieces of armor. And then they invited in the players. And with the players on board, they grew it. And the same thing was true for the ArenaNet guys that did the game Guild Wars. Another group that does a phenomenal job of involving the public early on, very early in the development cycle, to where their core constituents are really part of the process of development of the game. So I think the fact that the couple of thousand people that are online right now, plus I'm guessing you must have hundreds of thousands over the last few days or weeks or months that have come through. Those people are now part of your process. Even though you've got some amazing demo, visuals. Compared to the work that lies ahead, they're in right at the beginning.
No, they're in at the beginning, and the other thing that's kind of nice is that it sort of helps you focus on what people find important. So, anyone that's a designer, you've got your idea of what you want to do, but you always sort of also kind of need to bounce ideas and things off people, and you also have a lot of things you want to do, and so it really helps to prioritize what's the most important stuff. So you have suspicion. So I think a successful designer, his instincts tend to more or less align with what the majority of the game players do. So yours definitely did. I think mine did. But always there's cases where you look at stuff, and at the end of the day, when we did it in the retail fashion, you work on a game for 2 or 3 years, and then it would come out, and then people would play it, and there would always be cases where you're like, oh wow, if I knew that I would have done more this way or less this way. And what I find that's useful about the process that happening right now is that you sort of get an idea of that much sooner, and actually you get the feedback that allows you to there's people for instance we have ship insurance there, so you're not going to build your ship up and then lose it to a pirate attack and you got to all start again, because that would really kind of suck. But then people are like, well, what about insurance fraud? And you're like, well, I didn't even think about insurance fraud. And that would have probably been something if you were not doing it without the community so early, that it would have definitely come out in the wash, but it would have come out in the wash much later on. And sort of thinking about those sort of issues early on means that you can sort of design it into a system properly versus patch it at the end to try and fix something. So no, I think that's good. I think the enthusiasm is great, and I also think not necessarily for me and you, but for our teams, the thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of stuff for instance now I'm sort of showing some conceptual art and stuff that normally would only be internal to a team. And what's fun for that is to see people get excited, but also the people that create that sort of are getting feedback in a way they would never get feedback in the old-fashioned process, where they contribute, and by their concept art becomes the in-game art, which becomes part of the holistic finished game. And so people like the game and think the graphics are really good, but no one's calling out, if it was Dennis Dubé doing a design, no one's calling out the design that Dennis specifically did. Right. And so all that stuff is, I think it's fun. And then the other thing that's great is that you're not having to take a publisher's money to.
And all the strings that come with it,
or even I still have private investments, so I still have some strings with that, but because it's going so well, I don't have to take as much.
Exactly.
And that also is good, because there's always...
And the independent money is what also gives you great validation to the principles.
Right.
And so, as was part of your plan, that's what's also going to allow you to get much better backup money, is having the validation of all of you guys out there.
I think it's a good process, and...
but I want to start one thing too. I know you've heard me say this, so this isn't a surprise to you, but I'm not sure how many people outside have heard me say this too, but when you talk about how much value you're going to get from the audience, I think it's also really important to point out that one of the things that I think that Chris is particularly great about as a game developer, as a game designer, compared to many game designers, including myself, who often struggle with even what I call the foundations of the design, and have to kind of roll up a design a dozen or more times before it becomes what I'll call worthy to expose to the public, or worthy enough to kind of generate a large amount of excitement. One of the things that Chris has always done, starting at least with the very first Wing Commander, and absolutely with this product as well, is whatever Chris does with you and your core group to go off and magically come up with the initial pitch for a product. Most initial pitches are pretty rough around the edges. Your guys' pitches are always perfect. Your guys, well, what I mean is perfectly inspirational. they capture the essence of why it is going to be great. And I remember that all the way from the very first Wing Commander, when you sat down to show us your, here I'm going to go jump in a ship and go launch out of the tube and go shoot some guys down, and we were all just dumbfounded. And the same thing's true for this. So it's really amazing.
Thank you very much, Richard. I really appreciate it. It's really great. So should we take some questions for Richard, since we have a complete gaming legend here. And I'm sure a lot of our audience have played Ultimas as well as.
I saw a couple on the chat stream.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's a huge there's a massive sort of Origin following here.
Yeah.
And basically everybody's. I'll be political. I won't say it, but they don't have kind words for the company that bought Origin. Then took the name and used it for digital.
Yes, exactly. Well, I'm sure we all have opinions on that front.
He knows that Fred was here, and he knows that Martin was here. So should I take some questions for Richard?
Do you like space sims more or less now that you've gone into space?
Oh, that's actually an excellent question. It's funny that since my little off-planet sojourn, it's interesting to see how many times I get asked about how a trip to space has affected my game design and things of that nature. That's the first time anybody's asked me about playing space sims. And what's interesting, and that I think that Chris and his team do so well, is there's a huge difference between what is fun to do in reality and what is fun to do in a properly orchestrated simulation. And what I mean by that is, one of the most exciting days of my life was the day I launched into space. But the launch lasted 8.5 minutes. Although I was sitting in that capsule for like 8 hours prior to launch, a lot of it doing absolutely nothing. Even though it was really exciting, nothing that we were doing. We were napping literally for a big chunk of that. And even that 8.5 minutes, if you can imagine one of your launch sequences taking 8.5 minutes, it would be way too long. And so what I think all these things, including my space flight or deep sea or Antarctic expeditions that I go on, do for me is they show me things that are super exciting that I then try to capture that and either put it into the games that I work on, or I seek that out in the games that I play. These moments of excitement, like again the Wing Commander, that first great inspiration of the foundation of the original Wing Commander. That was a point of beauty that is to a game environment